So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this expert session. Today we have with us digital evangelist, Mr. Heminder Ahluwalia. And Heminder is a digital specialist with 30 years of overall experience in areas like program management, digital business, and CIO advisory services. He has worked with CXOs to build digital business roadmaps for B2B businesses like textiles, trading, real estate, food retail, metals, and as a trusted advisor catering to multiple needs across industry sectors. Built from ground up a multi-million-dollar CIO advisory business in India for the world's largest research and advisory services firm. Welcome, Heminder.
Thank you so much, Neeta, and that's a wonderful introduction. So thanks a lot, and thank you everybody for joining and taking this time out. Today we're going to talk about leadership in the digital world, and I'll take about, we have about an hour, so maybe I'll try to wrap up maybe in 45 minutes, and then leave some time for Q&A. So once again, thank you very much. So today's topic relates to a very important area under digital transformation, or however you may want to coin the two words, digital and transformation. Leadership is something that definitely cannot be ignored, right? And it is something that requires different kind of acumen, different kind of skill sets. A lot of, as we're heading more and more into the digital world, we are hearing about success stories, a lot of failures, and that's simply because it's not that technology is failing, because there is ample amount of technology available. It's not that processes are probably not getting properly defined or rewritten, because that's, I mean, you have the right tools to do that. The whole thing falls flat when you don't have the right kind of people in place. You don't have the right kind of leadership to give them guidance, direction, and that's what we're going to be focusing on in today's session. I have deliberately left out process and technology piece and trying to focus more on the human side of things, the people dynamics, the kinds of traits that we see in digital leaders, in leading organizations. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, towards the end, we'll leave some time for Q&A. So once again, thanks, and let's get started. Let me see if I can go to the next page. Okay. So what I'm going to cover, as you see on the agenda over here, is I'll start off with what is a digital enterprise, because I think we need to understand, before we really get into the thick of things for understanding leadership, it's important to understand what a digital enterprise is, and therefore, what does digital leadership mean, right? Also, I'm sure you'll have questions in your mind as to, okay, fine, this is digital leadership, but how is it different from traditional leadership, right? Is it the same? Is it similar? Is it quite different? What sort of mindset is required to get into the digital side of things? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about imperatives to drive digital, and these are some examples from very well-known organizations around the world. We'll talk about what are those key leadership traits that we see being driven by leaders in their organization, digital leaders in their organization. We'll spend some time on culture, because again, leadership, culture, they go hand in hand. What does digital culture mean, and how does one go about driving that kind of behavior in your organization? And then, of course, at the end, then we'll wrap it up with some recommendations, some takeaways, things that you can do, like we say, things that you can do Monday morning, right? So we'll look into those aspects as well. Now, I do want to mention that as a consultant, I am a consultant to a few organizations, to a major conglomerate, to a few startups. I also have my own outfit, which is called Minervian Consulting. So a lot of my content is it's available in public domain. It's also from my own experience, and thirdly from secondary research, right? So there are references to the content over here, and towards the end, if anybody is interested in this presentation to receive a soft copy, I'm more than happy to send it. You just have to reach out to 10x TV for that. Okay. All right. So with that, let's get started. So what is a digital business? Now, there are three main areas that digital business is all about. So the first is a company that has successfully implemented digitalization plan to fully integrate digital tools and technology throughout key parts of the operations, from conception to implementation and use, and is referred to as a digital enterprise. So a digital enterprise is an enterprise where there is an end-to-end integration, and a lot of digital assets and tools are used to transform a certain part of the business. It's also utilizing dispersed digital assets, right, and organizational resources, basically to transform an original business model into a new way of doing things, right? Because that's why we keep hearing the two words digital transformation. So the transformation comes from converting an original business model into a new way of either generating revenue or improving experience. It could be customer experience, it could be employee experience, or simply operations, right? The third part is digital enterprises concentrate on converting their data assets into digital formats and automating business processes with scalable technologies, right? So again, it is not a set of point solutions, but it is something that all integrates together and it becomes scalable, right? So these are the three things that one should note when we talk about digital business. So one might ask the question, okay, so how is it different from traditional business, right? It is very different from traditional business, as you can see over here, right? In fact, it's a flip side. We look at a traditional business is process-centric, right? Whereas a digital business is customer-centric. Latency is high in traditional, latency is low and real-time. Things are required to be in real time. Of course, it also depends on the nature of the business. I mean, if you're in financial services, if you're in retail, you would want low latency things in real time compared to, say, if you're in the mining industry, right? Traditional is cost-focused, digital is outcome-focused. Traditional is company-controlled, digital is customer-controlled, right? We talk about multi-channel, here we talk about omni-channel, right? Some of the policies are pretty rigid based on distrust, whereas in digital business, it is expected that it should be open, transparent, collaborative, right? And lastly, single function with siloed metrics, whereas in digital business is integrated function and KPIs, right? So as you can see, quite a big difference between traditional and digital. And why I'm talking about this is because we have this leadership in the back of the mind, right? So it requires different kind of leadership at all levels when you talk about digital business. And what is digital leadership now, right? So we saw what digital business is. Now, digital leadership, well, it is a management style, right, that focuses on using technology to bring about a step change in business outcomes, right? It's a step change. It's not an incremental change, but a step change through digital transformation, which impacts areas like experiential management. Now, that could mean customer experience, it could mean employee experience, but it is some sort of an experience, right, which is getting rendered through digital transformation. It's also about operations and new business models, right? Now, many of the organizations will not go for all three. They'll choose one. Either they'll want to excel in operations and do really well, or they'll look at customer engagement, customer experience and excel in that, or they look at employee experience and so forth. There are very few companies in the world that are masters in all three. And also it's working towards rewriting the culture of the organization to drive digital adoption, right? So like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, culture plays a very key role. So it's also about how leadership drives culture in a way that it's new ways of doing things, right, to increase digital adoption. Now, there are challenges, right? Now, all your leaders who are on this call over here, of course, will relate to these challenges. Now, what are those challenges for a leader, for a digital leader, say, right? It's speed to market, right? It's new technologies are coming out too soon. There are plethora of technologies, plethora of technology stacks. What do you choose? Where do you go? How do you, decide on what? Plenty to choose from. not able to move beyond the POC stage, right? We see a lot of organizations talking about digital and doing some pilot projects, but they continuously stay in that POC stage forever. Somehow are not able to come out. Very high expectations from the board or C-suite or line of business heads, right? Now, fortunately or unfortunately, the pandemic has changed the entire, there's a huge paradigm shift because of that. And that has put a lot of expectation on IT, on CIOs, on CDOs to move things very quickly, right? And now, digital, the way it's evolving or the way it has, evolved so far, the mastery doesn't remain just with the CIO now, right? Even line of business function heads also talk about digital. So there is, you have the challenge that you're not the only one who knows everything about digital. There are other people, functional heads, who probably could know more than you, right? A feeling that somebody else could do a better job. Now, this feeling is really creeping in because, again, digital is getting, as it gets more and more pervasive, as more and more ecosystems get, evolved and convoluted into day-to-day businesses. So, so that feeling is always there that somebody else could do a better job because now that knowledge is freely available, right? The Great Resignation, we are all aware of that. A lot of people are leaving their jobs, quitting, going elsewhere, or not going anywhere, doing things that are completely different. So there's a huge talent gap, right? And digital leaders are challenged with what to do and how to address this particular issue, which actually brings me to the next point, and that is employee experience, right? Now, employee experience in a highly mobile work from anywhere environment. So digital leaders are challenged with providing that kind of experience, that to work from anywhere. And lastly, last but not least, is driving cultural change to drive digital adoption. So these are some of the big challenges that leaders face. And the thing then is, what do you do? Right? Who do you go to? Where to start? What to upskill, reskill? These are some of the questions that people have. Right, and hopefully this presentation will throw some light on these specific questions as we move forward. All right, so we talked about digital business. We talked about digital leadership. Now let's talk about traditional versus digital leadership. Right, so how is that different or similar? There's a very interesting quote from one of the major organizations in the Middle East. It's called MAG Lifestyle Group, and from a very senior executive. And he says, today's leaders must have the ability to identify technological trends across different sectors, such as big data, cloud computing, automation, robotics. However, first and foremost, they must possess sufficient knowledge and the vision to use these resources most effectively, right? So the key thing is, as you step into the digital world and take on the role of becoming a digital leader, knowledge plays a very key aspect of everything, and having the vision to use these resources most effectively is something that'll make or break, so to say, as you progress in the organization. So now there's an interesting graphic at the bottom: industrial age management and digital age management, right? So what are the differences? Now, in the industrial age management, you can see the organization structure is very hierarchical, right? The mindset is very internal. Right? The attention is basically carrot and sticks, which means that you do this, you do that, you'll get this reward. It's a very command and control kind of way things are done, and it's more of telling and coercing, right? So this is a generalization, but this is what we typically see in traditional businesses that perhaps have not jumped onto the digital bandwagon as yet, but they're planning to, but they still operate in a very traditional manner, right? Compare that to a digital age leadership. Now here you have, it's a network, right? And a network is both internal and external, right? So it's not, you may still have flavors of command and control, but it's more dispersed now, right? The leadership is more dispersed. The mindset is external, right? How do you tap into the broader ecosystem. The attention is more of feeling and creativity. That's where we talk about experience, we talk about customer experience, we talk about employee experience, right? So it directly relates to feeling and creativity over there. And it's also about inspiring and collaborating, right? So digital leadership is, collaboration plays a very key role in this space. Now, recently there was a survey done by MIT Sloan and Deloitte, right? So both of them, they rolled out a survey and they asked two questions to a lot of CIOs, right? And business people as well. So the first question asked was, what is the difference between working in a digital environment versus a traditional one? And as you can see from the responses, the difference between digital and traditional is pace of business. So 23% replied and said that the difference is the pace of business. Digital, obviously, speed and rate of change matter a lot in a digital business compared to a traditional. Culture and mindset is the second one, with 19% saying that creativity, learning, and risk-taking is probably the second most important differentiator. The third most is flexible, distributed workplace. And as we can see, and the pandemic has shown that work from anywhere, a hybrid model of working, right? So these are taking shape and form, and where collaboration plays a very key role, right? So collaboration, decision making, transparency is the third highest differentiator. The fourth is productivity, streamlined processes, continuous improvement. Digital talks a lot about continuous improvement, right? Because it's something that is not static; it's constantly moving. So one has to, if you're in an organization where there's heavy emphasis on digital, then there will be an innovation cell, or there will be something of that sort where there is continuous improvement happening, right? So that comes under productivity. Then comes improved access to and use of tools, greater data availability, and so forth, connectivity, and all that, right? So that the first part is about the differentiator from a digital environment versus traditional one. Then the second question was asked, and that is, what is the most important skill organization leaders should have to succeed in a digital workplace, right? And a lot of them said transformative vision, right? And we keep hearing this word vision every now and then. And that's because it's not that it's the latest management buzzword, it sounds nice, when somebody says, yeah, or when they say that, yeah, he's visionary. It truly matters, right? It is important to have a vision because, like I said earlier, digital business, digital enterprise, it's not static. It's constantly moving. There are threats all the time. Competitive forces are always working against you. So one needs to have that vision that where are you going to take this company in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Which means knowledge of the market and trends is critical. Business acumen, problem-solving skills, those need to be there. Then second is forward-looking, which is again having clear vision, sound strategy, having that foresight, being able to it's not crystal ball gazing, but it's still having intuition and having that feel that yes, this is where we should be heading and this is what is likely to happen. So having that foresight is important for a digital for a leader. Third is who understands technology. Of course, it goes without saying. I mean, technology is the core. If you have to become a digital leader, you have to be very conversant in the key technologies that are out there, right? Then the fourth is change oriented. We talk a lot about culture, change management, and that has figured in this response over here, which means open-minded, being adaptable, innovative, and so forth. Then, of course, strong leadership, pragmatic, focused, decisive. So that's about 11%. And then there are other things that they said, right? So you're getting a sense that there are differences between traditional and digital, and it's a completely different way of looking at things and operating, right? So this was the difference between the two. Now, I'm going to talk about some major organizations and what those leaders, who sitting at the helm of the organization, what they've done to their businesses and how they have re-architected, reimagined their businesses, right? So about 10 years ago, the international corporation Philips, who had the headquarters in Amsterdam, they had a diverse portfolio of companies, right? So they were into lighting, medical equipment, audio, video, consumer electronics, and so forth. But those businesses were falling short of market expectations. The CEO at that time, Frans van Houten, he did a complete makeover of the company, right? So by combining Philips' extensive consumer insights and capabilities, its breadth of medical device innovations, and the strength of data and artificial intelligence, he rebuilt the firm as a technology firm. So now Philips is a technology firm. It's a technology company which is completely transformed from what it was. And that has yielded results, exceptional increases in profitability and shareholder wealth, because the stock has had gone up 82% during the 5 years leading up to 2020. Right? So here again, Philips having multiple businesses, a major conglomerate, they were doing reasonably well, but not exceptionally well. The CEO, which was new at that time, he came, he saw, and he looked at what are the company's strengths and weaknesses, and obviously the strength was in its healthcare, health equipment, and analytics and consumer insights. So he used all of that to reimagine the business, and after a few years, of course, now it's a totally a health equipment organization and very successful. The second is about ecosystems, right? So another key aspect or another key trait of a very successful leader is to build and leverage ecosystems. And in today's digital world, ecosystems matter a lot. This is a Japanese company by the name of Komatsu, and they've been in existence for a very, very long time, for decades, and probably the first ones to really come out with an ecosystem kind of a model, right, for the construction business. So to make construction sites smarter and safer, Komatsu introduced Landlog, right? So that's the name of the you can say the name of the ecosystem called Landlog in 2017. And it's an open platform that connects suppliers and construction firms. In Japan, it has connected over 10,000 construction sites, have access to Komatsu's ecosystem-driven platform. And this was by the end of 2020. And since then, the company has expanded the offer to other nations like US, UK, Germany, France, Denmark. They all are using their system. And what's so great is that it connects all the pieces of construction, right? So whether it is drones, whether it is road laying equipment, whether it is bulldozers, whether it is and things that need to get automated. So they're one of the pioneers to come out with this ecosystem model, and they've now become extremely successful. So again, the leader over here thought that, how does one take Komatsu to the next level? They could have continued staying in the same heavy machinery business, heavy equipment business, but they thought that the next revenue generating model is through building ecosystems. Excuse me. The third is build capability to capture and use customer insights to tailor product and service offerings, right? And a great example of that is Adobe. Now, Adobe began delivering its widely used apps as cloud-based software as a service solutions through direct subscription in 2014. So they shifted away from selling packaged items primarily on CDs and third-party distributors, as most of the softwares were then. They switched over to the SaaS model, and that allowed the business to track real-time usage of its applications by customers. As a logical step, Adobe subsequently reoriented a large portion of its organization structure and value creation strategy around customer insights, right? According to Adobe's executives, its data-driven insights capabilities is largely responsible for the company's revenue increase from about 6 billion in 2016 to about 13 billion in 2020, right? And early in 2019, they launched the Adobe Experience Platform as a result of its success, opening up a brand new revenue stream by allowing other businesses to purchase its insights directly. So here is a classic example of a leading organization that cashed in on customer insights because they went the SaaS model, SaaS method, and they started using insights for themselves first, and then obviously they sell it to other organizations. And there are many such examples. I mean, obviously, one example that comes to mind, pretty much everything is Amazon, right? And AWS, and how they have completely transformed the way things are done, pretty much into everything right now. The next example is about deep engagement with employees to drive digital transformation. And here is an example of FedEx. Since its beginnings, FedEx had put its employees at the center of its technological advancements, which have been numerous for the corporation, including the first real-time tracking system, the first website that lets users track parcels and so forth. So they were the pioneers who started all of that. Now it's commonplace. Any courier logistics company will have tracking and real-time tracking. So that's very common. But FedEx is the one who actually did it, and they did it with keeping employees at the center of the thing. They have something called GOLD, G-O-L-D, that stands for Growth, Opportunity, Leadership, and Development. It's a program that helps employees get ready for potential management succession, by using senior management's experience and knowledge, and by having them mentor frontline professional staff members who are interested in stepping into that space, into the management space. They also have something called FedEx Institute of Technology, and that's it's a corporation that provides training courses in subjects like blockchain, augmented, virtual reality, design thinking. And beyond the classroom, FedEx is preparing new workers for physically demanding and dangerous occupations like warehouse work, and they use employee technology like virtual reality and so forth. So this is, here's a leader who knows that its employees are its biggest asset, right? And how do you make them productive? How do you empower them with technology? And that's what this example is. It's about deep engagement with employees to drive digital transformation. Then the final one is about blended leadership, and a classic example is Starbucks, right? And Starbucks, as you know, was founded by Howard Schultz. He started the company, then he went out, and then he came back. And he's considered as one of the best strategic executors, or one of the best leaders. And he rejoined the company in 2008. And as a leader, he made lots of changes where obviously, rolled up his sleeves and actually redesigned or re-architected the Starbucks stores, to make sure that coffee flavor aroma, is constantly there in their cafes, which was earlier actually removed because they went into flavor locked bags of beans, and so as a result, one couldn't really smell that much of coffee, which now is changed, obviously. And he believes in blended leadership in the sense that making sure that you have the right kind of people that are with you, advising you all the time, and make sure that his peers and his one-downs get fully trained and fully, they become like him. And that's the beauty of his management style. And one could read it up on the public domain. There's a lot of information about Howard Schultz and his management style and how that's different. So these are some of the examples. All right, so that was about them. So now let's look at some. So what do these leaders have, right? What is it that goes well for them? So what do leaders do well? Well, like I said earlier, shape a strong vision and inspire others. Obviously, you need to be visionary. You need to be inspiring. They think beyond industry boundaries, and we saw some examples over here. Right? You think outside your boundary and see what more can be done as a leader. You have a curious mindset to explore the new. Right? You win adversaries over collaborations. You need that experimentation kind of a mindset to reimagine things. You need to be risk-taking, provide accountability. and of course, a great networking master, right? So again, being a digital leader, one has to have great networking skills. Now, all this is done by bringing in digital dexterity through being forward thinking, having a flexible mindset, willingness to adapt, right? Ready for digital challenges, having that digital first approach. So whatever you're doing or whatever these leaders think of doing as the next major thing, make sure that it's digital first. Um, um, we hear a lot about data-driven decision making, and that's all about how data can be used in the most effective manner to make some critical decisions for the organization, and that's through analytics and data analytics and so forth. Promoting an engaged workforce, which is again, being a digital leader, your workforce matters to you a lot, right? So how can you create that great employee experience for them? So that needs to be there as a key, as a trait. Now, all this is there because it yields, it finally, the question is, okay, fine. You do all this, then what? What does it yield into? Well, it leads into higher productivity for the organizations, better efficiency, complete agility, advanced risk appetite, better digital adoption, and so forth. Right? Now, so one might say, okay, fine, great, all this is good, but as a senior management leader, what do I need to do, right? Or what are the key things that I need to have besides the ones that I've just mentioned? Well, these are paying attention to detail, right? Great leaders are leaders who understand detail in the minutest manner. So attention to detail, they have a strong grasp on numbers. It is all about delivering experience. So that's the end goal is how do we deliver a great experience, whether it is customer experience, whether it's employee experience. They're always big picture thinkers because, again, being visionary, having that foresight, you need to be a big picture thinker as to where all this is getting, how's it all shaping up as a collective, right, for the organization. Data-driven decision-making is a key skill or trait for a digital leader. Have experienced failures. It's very important actually for any leader, but for digital it matters even more, is to experience failures. I was in one of my previous organizations, the chairman once, he made a point. He said that, look, I deliberately go out and look for people who have failed in their career somewhere, someplace or the other, because once you've experienced failure, you know what the bottom of the bottomless looks like, right? And if you successfully come out of it by doing something, then you have that advantage over others. Being an excellent storyteller is very critical for a senior leader because that's how you're going to get things done. For middle management, it's more about change agent. Of course, being highly delivery focused, value stream driven, because when we talk digital, we talk a lot about value and what's the continuous value that's coming out. Being able to measure things, which is embracing metrics and KPIs. Being a digital ambassador, right? It starts at that. In fact, it starts at the lowest level, but as a middle manager, you need to be a digital ambassador if you want to drive change in a certain manner. Be highly collaborative, use all sorts of collaboration tools, use agile and things like that, right? So those are some of the key digital traits. We're going to now delve into cultural transformation, and this is actually the World Economic Forum's interpretation of culture, right? Digital leaders are often challenged mostly on the cultural side of things, right? Due to behaviors, mindsets, and values. And those could be of individual people or it could be of organizational practices and company values. So the World Economic Forum defines digital culture, or rather the pillars for digital culture, into 4 pillars. The first is being collaborative. Okay, it goes without saying that collaborative across the organization with ecosystem partners, co-creating innovative solutions. So that's the collaboration piece. Data-driven is another important piece. The third is being customer-centric, right? So creating positive customer experiences through product and service offerings and relationships. The fourth is being innovative, right? Adapting and continually improving products and processes. So these are the four pillars that will help leaders drive the digital culture. And think of it as an iceberg. So the little shadow image you see over there is actually an iceberg. So there is a portion of the iceberg which is above water, about above that line, and there's a big piece that is under the line. So a good way to see this is what's above the line is what's visible, right? So what's visible from an individual lens is behaviors and actions. Those are visible, right? What is invisible are the mindsets, the expectations, beliefs, assumptions, the deeply held beliefs, values. Those are invisible. They're not, they're not seen like an obvious thing. From an organization perspective, what's visible are the organization practices like the operating model, business strategy, performance metrics, and so forth. And what's partially visible are vision and values, right? Unstated rules and priorities. Right? So it's important why I'm talking about this is because as a leader, if you have to drive that change, if you have to make that cultural shift, then one has to keep these in mind, because culture is again driven, at the individual level. It's also driven at the organizational level, right? It's actually a combination of both. So let's do a little bit of deep dive into this. The first piece is collaborative, right? Now here, to drive a positive change, to drive, culture in the positive direction, from a behavior and organization practices, you would look at ways of frequent collaboration between groups. You would evaluate, team leads on feedback from their team members, right? So these are, some examples, some statements, which will help you to, when you go back and think that, okay, how can I make my environment more collaborative, right? So from a behavior and organization practice, these are some of the sample statements that you see over there. From a mindset side, it's promoting behaviors like, I might speed up things when I involve others, right? Or I acknowledge that others bring in valuable perspective. It's appreciating other perspectives as well. From a values perspective, you're looking at trust, curiosity, inclusion, speed. So these are the things to keep in mind, when you want to drive cultural transformation through collaboration, right? When you talk about data-driven, right? So here again, the behaviors and organization practice point of view, it's quantitative and relevant KPIs, right? That guide decision-making strategy. It's governance structures that ensure inclusive and sustainable and secure data use. It's from a mindset point of view, it's promoting technology and data are key enablers, because they are. Data democratization optimizes value. And from a value perspective, you're looking at accuracy, efficiency. Obviously, it's data-driven, so it will be validated by accuracy and efficiency. So those are the kinds of things that you would need to do to drive cultural transformation from a data-driven pillar. Right? If you're looking from a customer-centric pillar, the behavior and organization practices that will promote customer centricity would be frequent customer interaction to understand needs, cultivating relationships with customers, and promoting positive mindsets like I'm curious about what my customer has to say. Right? From a values perspective, it is curiosity and trust. So that's from a customer-centric, and finally from innovation side, and innovation is a key pillar of cultural transformation as well as digital transformation, because like I said earlier, things are not static, right? Things are always moving, so you have to continuously innovate. So from a behavior and organization practice point of view, example of positive innovation, promoting positive innovation would be product development is continuously iterative, right? From a mindset side, failure is part of learning, and that's a very important mindset, because a lot of leaders, they believe that it looks nice in a textbook that fail fast and failure is appreciated, but many of them actually don't practice it. My advice to them would be that, look, when you're talking about digital transformation and being a digital leader, you have to accept that failure is okay, right? So within reasonable limits, it's okay. From a values perspective, flexibility, freedom, risk, transparency, all these are, things that promote values from a innovation perspective, right? So these were the four things that the World Economic Forum states that, if you have these four things in control, then you're in good shape to drive cultural transformation. So I'm down to my final slide. Right? So let's look at it from an organizational level, right? What can you do? From an organizational level, my recommendation are these 12. One is get an assessment survey done to find out, as the situation on the ground on digital adoption challenges, right? Where are you right now? Where is your organization right now, currently on the digital maturity curve? Determine the gaps, involve the right kind of people. And when I say right kind of people, these are decision makers, stakeholders, C-level, because digital transformation starts at the top, right? Though at the bottom, the foot soldiers are the enablers, the catalysts who will actually make things happen, but it starts from the top. So you need to have the right kind of architected workshops with the key people under one roof to help them arrive at a clear vision, a digital ambition for the enterprise. Where does the enterprise want to be in 2 to 3 years from a digital ambition point of view? Then you would expand on people areas like culture, ways of working, org structure, talent sourcing, right? Basically, you're putting your digital ambition in practice, in action, right? Then you would prepare a plan to upskill, reskill. You prepare a multi-year roadmap, complete with goals, values, initiatives, KPIs, technologies. And it's very important to have a roadmap because that actually, lays the foundation, lays the path of how you're going to get to where you want to be, right? With all the keeping in mind the goals of the organization, the values of all your key initiatives that you're going to do, what business value it's going to provide, and how you're going to measure and so forth. Set clear mandates for effective communication, collaboration, and data-driven decision-making at all levels, right? This needs to happen if digital transformation has to happen, and if, as a digital leader, if you have to become successful, then you want to make sure that these are in place. You create incentives, rewards, recognition to accelerate execution of digital ambition, put measurement criteria in place, put a great PMO, a project management office or a program management office to drive the execution piece of whatever gets decided here. And of course, you would schedule quarterly recalibration meetings because you may not get things right the first time and things would need to be recalibrated every now and then. So that's at the organization level. At an individual level, what can you do as leaders, as middle management, as somebody who's stepping into management, or even as senior management? Is number one is to invest in yourself, right? Come up to speed on key emerging trends and technologies and the use cases. Find a mentor or advisor who can coach you and be your sounding board. Seek feedback on your leadership skills, on how you can be more effective and value-adding and assertive. Build and nurture relationships with peers, partners, stakeholders, and C-level. It's very critical to build relationships because, like I said earlier, it's all about networking, right? So, digital leadership is because of the construct of ecosystems and the way things are managed and handled, relationships matter a lot. Establish a high-performance team mentality. And treat them as your greatest assets. Your people are your greatest assets, and how you can make them more productive. Like I just mentioned, the example of FedEx, right? Of how they believe that employees are at the center of the universe for them, and how to empower them with all the right kinds of tools. Adopt a digital-first mindset. Now, if you adopt a digital-first mindset, then obviously, you would give those positive vibes of digital to other people as well, and you would need to think through all the phases, right? So think. A digital-first mindset means you think about use cases, you think about the technology, the value that it can provide, how you would create a business case to get it ratified and get the agreement to go with it. What could be the ROI? Because these are the kinds of questions that your stakeholders and your leaders will ask you, right? And last but not least is bring in the big picture thinking through ecosystems, customer networks, data-driven decision making, and so forth. So that's another key area that one could sharpen at an individual level. So, ladies and gentlemen, these were some insights and thoughts and areas on digital leadership. I hope you found good value. And I'm open for questions right now. I think we still have a couple of minutes.
Yes, thank you so much, Heminder. That was very insightful. We do have a couple of questions. So one is, of course, Ashish Jain is asking that how can traditional businesses adopt digital technologies and become more digital in their operations? And the second part of his question is, how do digital businesses differ from traditional businesses in terms of scalability, reach, and revenue potential?
Yeah, so that's an interesting two questions. The first you said is how do you transform into a digital organization, right? From a traditional. So
that's right.
Yeah, so the answer to that is obviously the right kind of people would have to get together, which is your stakeholders, your C-level people, and they would need to look at. You need to have those discovery-led workshops, which is basically first doing a maturity assessment as to how much of digital is already there in the company, digital knowledge and acceptance, and in fact, this slide over here probably answers some of those questions. Then you would do some sort of an architected series of workshops where the key stakeholders and C-level people, they get together and work out as to what exactly they want their organization to look like in 2 to 3 years from now. And then, of course, you would create a digital ambition and so forth. So it's again, it's not something that will happen overnight. It's a journey program. It takes time, but it starts with discovery, right? Which is about where you are right now and what you want to do and where you want to take the organizations. Then comes the next stage, which is called the deep dive, where you're actually looking at specific initiatives for the enterprise, which would need to change. Then you would look at, the impact of that on your enterprise architecture, which is your data, technology, business, and so forth. So it's a series of steps that would need to happen in the sense, because digital business is all about, having the right kind of ecosystems in place. You would need to build customer networks. The revenue also is, again, it depends, from how your revenue is coming in. But when you're moving to a digital business, you're looking at newer ways of making money, right? Basically. And if you look at examples like, for example, like let's say, I'm not talking about born digital companies because they're born digital, so they have no legacy. But you look at companies like Disney, you look at companies like even at home, you look at Tata Steel. They were traditional businesses and they moved into becoming a digital business. Right now, a digital business could happen on a manufacturing side. It could happen on the customer-facing side. It could happen, on a revenue-generating model side. Again, it's a journey. So there are certain steps that need to happen before you start seeing those kinds of revenue.
Right. Heminder, the next question is from Cognify Labs. And the question is, how can leaders who are non-digital natives listen better and learn from Gen Z who are digital natives to build for the next generation users?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Gen Z are by default, they're digital ambassadors or digital natives, right? And I think it's perfectly fine, no matter where in the ranks those Gen Z people are. I mean, first, as a non-digital person, you need to be open to being a good listener, being open to trying out new things that possibly get suggested by Gen Z people. So I think it's and it's also like I said over here, it's investing in yourself, right? So which means one needs to do a lot of reading and a lot of listening to leading market research firms or IT and research advisory firms like Gartner, IDC, Forrester. They are the ones who actually talk a lot about emerging trends, technologies. There's a lot of information in the public domain as well, right? So it's just that one just has to find the time to do all of this reading and listen to leaders of such organizations like I mentioned earlier, who have done great things. So yeah, so I think that would be my answer.
Right. The next question is by Tina D'Souza. What are measures that are generally adopted or suggested to upskill the existing pool of talent within an organization?
I would say that you would need a strong learning and development cell in your organization, and I know some organizations, they've actually tied up with the likes of Coursera and Udemy for business, that is, which can give them a quick understanding of key technologies and key methodologies. Even things like digital transformation. What does it mean? What are the building blocks of digital transformation? All that is available through such organizations like Coursera, Udemy, which at an individual level you can do, but even corporates even tie up with them, right? Also, usually in the organizations you'll have, like the earlier question was about Gen Z, make digital ambassadors in your organization who go and talk about digital to other people, right? So a lot of learning also happens through peer learning. So I think these would be some of the things that I would recommend.
Right. And one final question by Himani Tiwari. The question is, in a remote setup, how does one ensure optimum time usage and deliverables by the team?
Well, in a remote setup, yeah, I mean, that I think you would need that discipline to make sure that you spend time on whatever you're supposed to be doing, from a technology upgradation perspective. But so there are technologies out there that can provide remote learning and even monitoring, for that matter, to make sure that folks who are not in the office but at whatever location, they're actually accessing the right kind of training material and things of that nature to upskill themselves.
Thank you so much, Heminder. That was such an insightful session. Thank you for taking our time. And
thank you so
to
much.
all the participants.
Thanks a lot, and it's a pleasure being here, and hope there were some good takeaways and good value that came out of this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.